Today's episode is brought to you by Overwatch League preseason.
Drop the beat.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I am your host, Blevins. With me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Not too much. I'm here, at least physically. We'll see about the rest of it.
Yeah, me too. But the show must go on. We're both just a hair under the weather, so if our voices sound a little bit different, that's something you're just gonna have to deal with. I think I sound even better because I've got this nice sultry low voice, kind of like that Blazing Bob voice. Oh yeah, that raspy low voice. Okay, Bob is in the chat right now and he's already blushing too much, so let's move right along. Got a lot to talk about. Obviously the Overwatch League preseason is underway, so we're gonna go through all those matches. Talk a little bit about those. We're going to give you an update on the Nexus Cup, which I know, guys, there's other Overwatch. That's not the preseason happening. And then we're going to talk about, we've actually got a bunch of different headlines that are in the news for competitive. And then we've got some other stuff that we're going to talk about as well, including, of course, our memes and all of our normal stuff. But that's what we've got on the docket for today. But let's start off with a little bit of housekeeping. For those of you who have been listening, you of course know that we have a giveaway going on right now for Overwatch League Stage 1. It's going to be going on. The giveaway is going to be continuing on throughout Stage 1. If you go to our pinned tweet on Twitter, we're at High Noon Podcast. Go to that pinned tweet. You're going to see the Gleam link for all the ways to enter that giveaway. The winner is going to get an Overwatch League jersey of their choice. So I definitely will send you a NYXL jersey for sure.
He means Outlaws, don't worry.
Or an Outlaws one.
Green Wall.
Oh man, there's the first time the green wall button was played. I've got this new thing for the stream. Oh, I can't show it. Oh yes, I can. It's a stream deck. I've got a soundboard now. My dreams of being a morning talk show host / soundboard operator are now coming to fruition. But we will send you either a
Excelsior
or
Green Wall
jersey. Okay. I'm going to try to not spam the buttons.
And in reality, we just want to point out we'll actually send you whatever team you want. Just let us know after
your choice, whatever team you want. We will send it. And then also, runner-up is going to get one of these awesome little Overwatch World Cup pins, which I don't know. I don't think you can get them on the website anymore, so they might be pretty rare. I don't know. Whatever. Okay, so moving right along, a couple other bits of housekeeping. We do, last week, there was like a 5-day period where we had 3 interviews. We had Grim Reality from the LA Valiant. We had Note from the Boston Uprising. And then we had Bishop, the head coach for the London Spitfire. All of them were on the High Noon Hot Seat. All of those episodes are out on iTunes and SoundCloud and all that stuff. They're also on YouTube. So check them out. You can find all the links and whatnot on their respective sites or at highnoonpodcast.com. Let us know what you think about those. And also, we don't usually say this, but I've just been thinking about it. Like, let us know who you want to see on the hot seat. You can tweet at us or join our Discord and let us know who you want to see on the show. We kind of work with, A. Smith, and we just kind of bounce ideas off of each other and see who we want to get on the show. So if you guys have a certain person that you want to see on the show, let us know. And we will do our best to get them on. Up next, this is a piece of housekeeping that we've been keeping kind of close to the chest, but I think now we're at a point where we are ready to announce it. This is a brand new show that the High Noon Podcast is going to be making. It is called Around the Payload. So if any of you have ever seen Around the Horn on ESPN. It's a show basically where there's a host and there's 4 guests. They talk about different topics in sports on ESPN. Real quick, 60-second answers. Some of them are even just like, buy or sell, really quick form, kind of keep the topics moving. Just Google Around the Horn and watch an episode. That's what we're going to be doing in essence for Overwatch League. It's going to be called Around the Payload. I'm going to be the host of that, like Tony Reale, Deathblow, A. Smith, and Thornrain are going to be normal guests. Then we're going to have we're going to be mixing up the guests on the show from time to time, so we don't know, it's not going to be the same hosts every time. There's going to be a different mix and mash. We've already reached out to some people. Reached out to some people to be guests and guesting on the show, so we're super excited to be doing that. We are going to try to get the pilot episode out before the holidays. Our
illnesses may preclude us from doing that,
right?
But we will do our
we're on a very tight schedule right now before the holidays because I set sail on the 22nd, and we're going to try to record 2 additional episodes between now and then of the normal show. We're going to try to get interviews in, and we're also going to try to get the pilot of Around the Payload in. So we're going to try to get the pilot in. We're not sure yet. But Deathbow, anything else you want to say about Around the Payload?
No, it's just, it's kind of a pet project that we've talked about in the past and then never really seriously done anything with it. And shout outs to Thornrain for kind of bringing it back to our attention and suggesting that we do it. And he's been really helpful in, getting the logistics set up and planning everything out. So big shout outs to, everybody that's helping. This is going to be a great way for us to kind of bring A. Smith and Thorn in. They're regular contributors to the show, kind of in the background. And, we want to do what we can to help people. Thorn is actively producing content. So hopefully it can help him get introduced to a wider variety of listeners, and it's kind of our way of like giving something back to the community a little bit by, helping some of our friends that have helped us so much. And just, providing more fun content because, Overwatch League is something that is only getting bigger. And, as it's approached, we've seen our listenership grow. And this is kind of, we've promised for a while we'd do more. How many times we said we'd write on the website and all these things. And this is kind of a fun way to just give you guys a little additional content. And, one thing I do want to say about it is please do come by for the live show. Like it will be up on YouTube. I don't think we're going to be putting it on the iTunes feed because it's so much it will have visual components and things like that to it. It's going to stop by for the live show because we're going to do a lot of different, polls and things like that. And
the chat's going to be able to interact with us.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with the around the horn format, think of it a little bit like, I mean, the format's very different. We'll be discussing and debating things, but think of it like Whose Line Is It Anyways, where the points are made up and the score doesn't matter. But nonetheless, it'll be there, and there will be a winner decided. So it's just a lot of fun. It's a goofy.
There'll definitely be plenty of this going around.
Shame.
Yes, yeah, we'll be having a lot of fun with it, hopefully.
Shame.
Yeah, I'm gonna basically be at the helm of that, divvying out made up points that don't matter at all. And then there will, of course, we're gonna do a lot of stuff with it, but I don't want to give away too much of that. The pilot episode is going to be coming soon, TM. So keep an eye out for that. Let us know what you think about that idea, and if you had any segments or anything about that. Any ideas of that? Always open to hear that. But let's move on to the regular show and talk about what did we do last week. Death, do you want to start out?
Sure. So I had I was on vacation for last week. I finished cleaning my apartment. Blevins can now vouch for me that I did a pretty good job with it. Yes, but yeah, it's all done, and so we got to watch the preseason at my place, at least for the Houston-Dallas matchup, and then the New York-Boston matchup. Yep. You were here for both of those, so it was a really good time. Also, I did my placement matches for the season, got those done and out of the way finally. I got to say, completely worth the wait. I don't regret waiting at all. I'm now at a new career high. Immediately out of placements. Like I ended up 150 SR from my placement games or something like that. 7-3 record, pretty good, I hear. So yeah, I've just been kind of playing a little bit, and I'm trying to like get back with some old teammates and things like that, and get in some comp time with them. Trying to make that GM push. We'll see.
Nice.
Hopefully that can happen this season, but I think it ends at the end of the month, right? It's already a couple weeks away, and there's holiday stuff, so who knows?
Yeah, and then
maybe I could just
it's done.
do placements and be up another 150 next time and just be there. That'll be the dream, I guess. So in 2 more seasons of just doing 10 games a season, I could be at the GM level.
Yeah, I've definitely wanted to make that push. This last week, I didn't really play a ton. I did a little bit. I'm still floating around 2100. I want to make the push. Like I need to break. I feel like I'm getting to the point where like I'm playing a little bit under where I should be, but not by much. So I'm getting like a lot of gold medals, like more. I feel like I'm doing more than I should need to at this level. So I feel like I'm ready to, go up a couple, 100 points or 100 or so points. So I'm feeling good about this season. I just haven't had a ton of time to play, but I've really wanted to play, which has been different than the last few seasons where I've been like, okay, I'll play. And like, I know I need to play. Now I'm like, you know what? I would be happy to play. I just don't have a ton of time to do so. But in terms of what I did in real life, I did so much this weekend. I had like the most jam-packed weekend ever. My girlfriend and I were celebrating our 6-month anniversary, which is always nice to do. We did a bunch of stuff together, which was great. We went to like a Santa themed bar crawl, which was okay. I take it or leave it. We saw The Disaster Artist, which was great for anyone who's familiar with The Room. Definitely should check that out if you know anything about The Room. And if you don't, my first thing is say don't ever watch The Room. Just forget I said anything. Or dive fully deep into it and watch it and get sucked into the meme and the cult of it. And then go watch The Disaster Artist. It was great. And then we topped off the weekend by going to a Bills game. My first Bills game in like 15 years. My first like professional football game I've gone to in like 15 years. And there was like 8,000 feet of snow. It's like -30 out. And
honestly, even if we had like only 5 NFL fans, like people have probably seen footage of that game at this point.
It made national news.
Yeah, it's rare to see that much snow. It was literally, I live in the same, it's funny. We both live in Buffalo, but our weather is very, very different. Yep. Like I get snow by the feet and Blevins gets it by the inch.
Yep.
And like it started like right before the game, probably like a half an hour, and it went for like 12 hours that day. We got like 2 feet of snow yesterday, and there's another foot coming tonight. It's craziness. Crazy weather.
It was crazy because we got to the game and like it wasn't even bad, and then it just started and it didn't stop ever.
Yeah.
But I gotta say it was an amazing experience to be in the crowd for that, and it just makes me think like, what can we do to make Overwatch League feel even somewhat like this? Because it's just such an unreal experience being in a stadium with that many people, like all going crazy the whole time.
I think Overwatch can do that, but what they can't mirror is the uniqueness of the snow and like the lunatic element that comes with just being outside for 3 hours to not be able to see the game. It had to be so hard to actually watch that. So there's like a certain amount of lunacy that goes from just sitting there through that makes it so much fun.
Yeah, it really like, and I'll end with this so we can actually talk about, Overwatch and stuff.
No, this is a football podcast.
It felt a lot like, have you ever had you plan to play like a backyard football game with your buddies, and like, okay, we're gonna play on Saturday, and like everyone comes and plays Saturday, but it like pours or it snows or something. It's like you're not gonna cancel and do it on another day. Like this is the day you do it. This is the weekend. We're playing today, and you play in the rain, and all your parents like, oh no, you can't play, like you shouldn't play, but you play anyway, and you're sloshing around and you're throwing the ball, and it's not going anywhere, and you slip and fall 100 times, you sprain your wrist. It's awful. It's awesome. that's what the game felt like. Like it was just like a lot of just like sloppy play, but like everyone was out there, looked like they were having a good time, even though they probably wanted to kill themselves. I had a great time. Would not have traded that game for any other game.
I will, as long now that we've won it, despite a ridiculous play calling decision by the coach. Now that we've won it, I will say it was super fun. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, exactly. But let's move right along to
Overwatch Today Meme of the Week.
Of course, the Overwatch Today Meme of the Week. And again, this week we just had like such a good meme pop up that wasn't from Overwatch Today, but we're gonna give it to him anyway. So so for those of you who are watching all 3 days of Overwatch League preseason, you noticed, we had Mr. X on the broadcast, and the first day, Mr. X. Let's not even sugarcoat it. Mr. X is not a tall guy, and I don't know how tall Uber is, but he's taller than Mr. X.
I don't even think Mitch is super tall, to be honest.
I don't think I don't know how tall either of them are, but there is a discrepancy in their height. Yes, 4 days of Overwatch League. They're not 3. I'm stupid. There's a discrepancy in their height, so. If you notice the difference between the first day and the second day, Mr. X seemed to have gotten taller, and I'll bring up so it turns out that they actually brought out a step stool like box for him to stand on. So like you notice that he got taller, and then of course the meme popped up, and this one was from Harsha that just said he tweeted out this picture. And the picture is now like Mr. X being like a foot taller than Mitch, and it says, "Really proud of Mr. X's growth as a caster in person throughout his time in Overwatch." And he's like a foot taller than Uber now. It's it's one of those things that like it's just so stupid that you've just gotta love it. And I loved it enough to make it the meme of the week. So dumb. It's just so dumb. I was dying when I saw that tweet, but let's move.
There's like 3 or 4 levels like throughout the event. They just like kept adding him. So he started shorter, then he was on par with them, then he was taller, and like they would just keep moving it around. It was really funny. So props to them for in a professional broadcast, like it's tough to make the decision when to make goofy jokes like that, and that one just came across really well to me. It was a lot of fun. So glad to see they're taking it seriously, but not too seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the commentary and analysis by like Shaq and Charles Barkley is like the perfect like line to walk of having serious and relevant analysis, but also just being straight goofy and dumb. And I'm really glad to see that Overwatch League is trying to walk that line as well, and is willing to walk that line, because they very easily could have gotten a bunch of super serious casters that just call it straight down the line, and like a Joe Buck type of personality that's just we're gonna call it. They're a good broadcaster, but there's no real personality to a Joe Buck type of caller. So glad to see that they're keeping sort of the esports spirit to the broadcast. But let's move right along to
It's Tournament Talk.
We're going to start the tournament talk off with an update on the Nexus Cup. Again, a lot of Korean and Chinese teams were in the cup, and we are down to our last 6 at this point. So in the winners bracket, still waiting to play, we've got Lunatic High and X6 Gaming, as well as Element Mystic and Kongdu Panthera. And then in the losers bracket, we have VC Gaming and Meta Athena. So the loser of Lunatic High X6 Gaming is going to then play VC Gaming in the losers bracket, and then the winner of Element Mystic and Conduit Panthera is going to play against Meta Athena in the losers bracket. So That's kind of where we are at, where we're at in the Nexus Cup. Like we mentioned before, Totally Drunk has actually been posting all of the English broadcasts in our Discord channel. So if you want to see those, you can go to the, I believe it's the tournament. It's in one of the channels.
Live tournament chat.
Live tournament chat. If you enter the Discord, which you can find the link over at highnoonpodcast.com. It is also discord.me/highnoonpodcast. Now it's not a crazy random thing now. We'll point you in the right direction to those VODs. So glad to see that's still happening. And we'll update you again next week. Yeah, let's move on to the preseason matches for Overwatch League. Obviously, this is our first taste of Overwatch League play. And I've got to say,
delicious.
Absolutely a delicious bite. Like we mentioned before, Death and I did meet up on day 2 and watch the games in real life. So I was quite happy about that. It was a really great experience. And we've done this before, where we usually end up getting like souvlaki or pizza or something and then watch the games all day. This felt different for some reason, in a good way. Like before when I think we watched Contenders and we watched MLG Vegas, and I think we watched one other tournament too. And like, it was nice to have those tournaments on, and like we were paying attention kind of, and like watching good Overwatch, but this just felt like something different entirely. Did you get that feeling, Death?
It did. I mean, it felt more like it would, like when somebody comes over, you hang out with somebody for a Bills game. It did kind of have that feel. I think part of it was, like the other tournaments run all day long. They're like 13-hour marathons every day. So like, it's just, you're like settled in for the long haul, right? Like you're not zoned in and focused on the one super important match.
Right.
And that's what it was in a lot of these days, right? Like there was, I was, super anxious and excited for the Houston matchup, and then the other ones were like an opening match, you know what I mean, in a lot of ways, and it was like, oh, okay. Now I'm watching them with a critical eye and things like that, so they did have a good length to them, right? Like they weren't short days on the overall, but I think it's got the right feel to it. Like you said, it feels like you were coming over for our 2 matchups, right? So it was like about the length of a full game. Maybe a little bit longer than that, like a full football game, but it definitely had a different feel, and also just the anticipation, right? Like how long we've been waiting for the Overwatch League, and how nervous, excited, and anxious, and everything, all the feelings under the sun that we've felt about the league since the announcement of it, since before, since the rumors of it, everything. It's all culminating into that one event. Those 2 days really. Just were kind of unmatched for Overwatch from an excitement level for me. After they'd played, it died down a little bit. I mean, I was still very excited, but I really think kind of the first wave was a different experience on the overall for me, getting ready for the matches.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of things that compounded. It's the jerseys, the first time seeing the regionality, the live crowd, the super slick and really well done broadcast. Like it all culminated in a very good way. The days, I feel like the 3 matches is like the perfect amount to play in a day. It's something that you want to devote your time to, but you don't feel like you're there all day. Like an Alienware monthly melee just is like a 20 million hour event. Even like the weekly events were 12 hours plus for each day. So it was nice. It was a couple hours. And like, it was nice because it's preseason, and B, because it's Overwatch League. Like if you are a San Francisco Shock fan, you don't necessarily need to watch the Dynasty versus the Dragons. I mean, I think in this specific preseason, you do want to watch that just because like you want to consume as much as possible. And there's so many unanswered questions right now because it's season 1. But, moving forward, I would imagine that a lot of people aren't even going to watch the preseason. We obviously will, but a lot of people might not even watch the preseason. And if they do, they're going to watch their team play, which I think is ultimately what Overwatch League wants to become. I don't think Overwatch League is not designed to be like, okay, well, everybody watch every single match, watch 10,000 matches of Overwatch League this season. There's going to be some super fans and, content creators like us that are going to be watching, a lion's share of the matches. But it's not designed for the layman fan to watch every single game and really care about every single game. You're supposed to have your team you want to win going in, pick your team, pick your, who you want to see win and root for them and watch those games.
It's like I said in Discord, I'm like, that's my burden. That's my, that's what I have to deal with.
Yep.
As somebody that wants to be an analyst and wants to be able to intelligently discuss the outcome of every single match that goes on. But the fan doesn't have to do that. You watch your team and a couple of the close matchups each week, and then listen to the podcast, and I'll be more than happy to fill you in on what happened with the rest of it. We'll let you know if there's a VOD you should go back and watch, stuff like that. It's going to be important that I think the average Overwatch fan does not attempt to watch everything. It will be exhausting. And honestly, even in the preseason, people that wanted to were unable to. Like, the scheduling is done on purpose to make it easy for you at times and difficult at other times, because at those times it's easier for people in other locations. So it's and that's only going to compound once they're in there. So.
Yeah, it was even hard for me to catch some of the matches. I ended up watching the Seoul versus New York game in a bar on my phone, so that was good. But how do we want to do this, Death? Do we want to go through each match individually, talk a little bit about it, or do we want to go through all of them and then talk about specific ones?
Honestly, I think there's enough. I mean, so we'll go into more detail on some than others, but I think there's more than enough to talk about, for all the matches that we should really kind of brush on them quick.
Okay. So first match of the Overwatch League was Florida Mayhem versus San Francisco Shock, and the Shock ended up taking that one down. Death, do you have the score on that one?
I thought it was on the notes, so I put it away. I've got it. It was 3-1 San Francisco. Yeah, really a surprise here. I mean, to just take the easy joke. Shocking result. We all had our concerns and our issues about Florida, and I don't think most of them were really centered around kind of the immediate performance of Florida. It was more about over the long haul, how are they going to hold up with only 6? And people expected them to be a solid, very, very competitive team. And we had a ton of questions about San Francisco going into this.
A lot of them.
And to me, down the line in this match specifically, like, they answered every single one of them. Who's going to play projectile? Who's going to be the flex DPS? Oh, okay.
The answer to all of those questions was Baby Bay.
Baby Bay's just ridiculous on everything, and we didn't know. He's just been hamstrung and stuck on Soldier and McCree this whole time, and he's actually absurd at Widowmaker, and he's really, really good Genji, and he made huge plays in this matchup, and really surprised. Is Sleepy going to be able to hold up? I mean,
Who is Sleepy?
Yeah, who is Sleepy? Nobody thought he was going to be a bad player. Like, there's a reason he had his ranking and he got here, but that doesn't mean that he's used to the team environment and he can be a really beneficial member of that team. And he held up very, very well, and he made a lot of plays, and it wasn't a perfect match or a perfect weekend from Sleepy. He had his issues for sure. There was times when he was kind of getting beaten up a little bit. And by the way, our Discord was just blowing up throughout the matches. So if you want people to talk to in the middle of matches during the league season, make sure you join. The live tournament channel was always full of good conversation. But
a lot.
And there were times when I even said in there, I'm like, Sleepy's getting abused right now. Like, he's getting beaten up. Somebody needs to peel for him. Where is the Lucio? And then Dak would switch to Lucio, and then all of a sudden Sleepy's all over the kill feed. So they were even, struggling at times, but they were adapting and they were fixing what was going wrong. And I think that's one of the most important things you can see from these teams that are kind of the Junkenstein's monster teams that have been built, is that they're able and willing to adapt. And I thought San Francisco obviously winning was a huge surprise here. Went against both of our picks, went against the power rankings pick. It defied all of the thoughts and reasoning going into this, and really kind of flipped the script on both of these teams, I think, in a heartbeat, right? Like, who is Florida now? Like, that wasn't, where was Logix? He didn't show up. Like, Swoosh was abused and beaten up, as you pointed out in Discord as well.
Yeah, I was not the most sympathetic towards Swoosh in that match.
No, I mean, you stuck your neck out for these guys. You said, guys, this is misfits. Like, and when everybody else had their doubts and their questions, and everybody else just kind of got validated by this performance. It was surprising, to say the least.
I mean, in this match, yes, absolutely. Everyone got to, serve me a dish of crow on this one. I'm still holding out at least until through the first couple of weeks of the preseason. And here's why. There's still misfits. Like, let's not forget who misfits is, who misfits was. Like, I get it. Like they didn't do super well against San Francisco Shock, but if you look at how the preseason is formatted, what it means, and how the teams treated it, no one was going to throw their aces out and really try hard and win and do all of their expert comps and all this stuff. No one was going to try to do that for preseason. It was to get used to the stage, to get all your players out there, to get a little bit of publicity. It was not to try to win some sort of prize money or anything. So that was not a line. And all of the other teams had a built-in ability to kind of cloak their starting air quote strategies by just switching up the teams over and over again. Every player had to play at least one map. So every team had the ability to switch up their comps. If they wanted to try to win, they could, or if they wanted to just try out something new in terms of their comp, they could switch up the players in between maps. Misfits, obviously, with only 6 players, couldn't do that. So they were incentivized more than anyone else to not put their best hand or their best foot forward, so to speak. So there's that. There's also rumors that they weren't, that they didn't scrim as much as the other teams. And we talked about this in the pre-show, it's not really an excuse, and maybe they just didn't take it seriously. Whether that's a good idea or not, whatever. All I'm saying is that if you are a Florida Mayhem fan, I would not be canceling your shirt order quite yet. I mean, I wouldn't cancel your order anyway, because I think you should pick a team and stick with them anyway. But I think there's still hope for the Mayhem. They are a proven team in the past, and maybe it's a meta change that they need. Maybe it's just a little bit of a roster shakeup. Maybe some of the players just feel a little bit too comfortable. I don't know. Let's get Swoosh out of there. No, I'm not gonna point any fingers yet, because I don't want to have an awkward conversation with a potential guest at some point. But the last thing I'll say about Florida is that people, since Contenders Finals, people have been pointing the finger at Logic, saying, he crumbles on land, and he didn't do great. Didn't do great in Contenders on land. Didn't do great here on land, and I can't deny that. That's fine. I think that those growing pains are going to be outgrown very quickly when you have a 40-game season. Maybe it takes maybe it takes a whole stage for them to get back up to snuff, and then they can do some, some shakeups and some pickups in that, that trade, or that trade and pickup frame in stage 2. But I think they've got a basis that has succeeded in the past. They've got extremely talented players. Logix is still an extremely talented player. Tivik, obviously one of the best of all time, very flexible, great player. I think they just need a little bit of a push in the right direction. Maybe it's swaps or something to really get them back up to where I think they need to be.
I'll say this about Florida. I don't worry that they're going to be a bad team this season, but I really think these pre-built package teams coming in from other places really need to have a fast start here, right? Mm-hmm. Because they are going to get past. It feels like to me, right? These other teams, there's a reason. There's a much more of a reason why these teams are together, and I get why Florida would want to keep the Misfits roster together, just move them over. It makes sense, but to not give yourself, like, do what Dallas did, right? And we saw them, I think, more aggressively use substitutions than I thought they would in the preseason.
Yeah.
And well, we just have to completely reserve judgment on most of the subs because they were forced. And because of the nature of the preseason, we can't go too in depth and decide all the position battles based off of them. But Florida just doesn't have this option, and they're going to struggle on land at the beginning of the season, and then that's going to go away. But where are they going to be in the standings? Because I don't know if they're not going to turn on and really activate until stage 2 or stage 3. They're probably not going to be in a position to make a push for the top of the leaderboards. They're probably going to be too far down or too buried behind subpar performances early on while they figured out how to play on land. And in the meantime, they don't have anything they can do, right? Like, what if they go out and struggle against a beatable team, right? Like, this is something that I think is really, really important, right? Like, you're going to go out there and you're going to play against a team that's at the bottom of the standings, and like they still belong here, right? Like, they're not awful. They just aren't performing well right now, but they get a little progress against you, right? Like, they're up 2-0 and they have nothing to turn to. They can't do anything to shake it up. They can't, try to bring it back, and that's going to hurt them, and that's going to cost them a couple wins. And so now when you have that costing them a couple of wins here or there, and then you also have just poor land performance handing them losses early on in the season, like I just think they're likely to bury themselves in mediocre play at the beginning of the season and not be able to make a serious playoff push, because for the most part, there's very few teams that lost in this preseason. And I think Florida's one that did. And so I don't know. It's going to affect things in the power rankings going forward for sure as we redo ours over the next week or two here, after the preseason. But we'll have to wait and see. It's going to be tough to really pin this team down until we see how fast they adjust to the LAN environment, because if Logix can play like he did at the beginning half of Contenders, then they're going to be fine. Tavik made plays. He was a a little inconsistent, but he made some plays and he did some good things, and he just didn't have a ton of help.
Right. I mean, that's the problem, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of things that we learned from this Overwatch League preseason. One was that most of the players are way more flexible than we were giving them credit for.
Yeah.
Just across the board for the most part. And, I'll be the first to admit it. I undervalued that flexibility from the player standpoint, and as well as from the team standpoint. I'm starting to now think about the argument against 6 players for this, because with just across the board, everyone being very flexible and being able to change up the comps just within one map, Misfits has the ability to do that because Tavik is such a flexible player. The problem is that he can play all sorts of stuff. He can play anything that's needed. The problem is that when he changes from something, that gap, that hole needs to be filled with someone that is up to snuff at the spot that he's leaving vacant, and that's just not what they're seeing right now, and he's not getting the support that he needs. If Tavik could flex to something and there could be 2 Taviks, we'd have they'd be in a much better situation, but that's not the case.
And you look at what's happening with the support meta right now, and I'm not sure we're seeing the final form of the support meta, to be honest. I saw some things in this preseason that made me think, I undervalued Mercy. Overall, that she still has more of a place than I thought she did. But at the same time, I don't think she's an auto pick by any stretch in this meta. And I think we're just not seeing variety because they don't want to show it. But what does a team like Florida do, right? Like, you see all these teams running out 2 flex support players, right? Because it's previously been, here's your Lucio main, and then here's your guy that can play every other support hero. And you've got a team like Florida that doesn't have 3 supports on their lineup, so their Lucio main is just stuck trying to flex or stuck playing Lucio. And if Lucio's not good, and if teams are able to beat you and you're stuck on the hero, you need to switch. And Zebo is a pretty flexible player. He's played some Ana, he's even got some DPS roles, but like, they need him to play Moira, they need him to play Zenyatta, and that's what we saw the other teams doing with their supports, and Florida didn't have that ability. So different metas will really force the need to have quality depth players on your team, I think. And that's something that hurt him too. But hopefully, the stages at least are all on one meta. And, if the signing window opens up after stage 1, Florida might not be in too much of a problem. Like, they've just got to adjust to one meta. But if they have multiple meta adjustments to make before they can make roster moves, they might be in a little trouble.
Right. I think, I think we talked about this when we were actually watching the match, or watching the matches, but, Florida really needs to take advantage of this signing window. I don't know how much a lot of the other teams are going to even use it. It seems like they've kind of, unless everyone's like, okay, this is where we fill out and we all go up to 12. I would imagine a lot of these teams don't even touch any players. So Florida's going to be the most incentivized to pick up players and do some swaps. And they're also going to have, theoretically the best pool of current talent to pull from. So Florida, with the signing window could actually really level up. If they're the only team, or they're one of the like 3 teams that are really going to try to use the signing window.
Personally, I hope they all fill up to 12, because so far I think the general consensus, at least on the broadcast desks and the way it was discussed, is that like the value of in-house scrims is really invaluable. The fact that you can practice things and announce nothing and unveil nothing and show it to no one is I think enough of a reason to carry the full 12. And I hope it's more aggressive, but they'll definitely and should be the most aggressive, and they'll be the most attractive target too, because it's the clearest path to playing time. Do you want to be the 11th man on a roster that's been playing for 3 months, or do you want to be the 7th man on a roster that desperately needs support and desperately needs people to come in and give their guys a break? So I think if people want to get out there and they want to get their footage and their game time in front of the fans and on tape, then Florida is going to be a great place for them to go. So the signing period will be big for Florida. Not panicked on them, but I'm worried.
I would not be surprised if we see the best players from EU go to Florida, just because of the core. Wanting to play with Tavik is obviously, like, everything I've heard is that he's just great to play with. He just makes you a better player. The only thing that I think would be keeping them from getting top talent is if that top talent is like, no, I'll just make the Toronto team in season 2, or I'll make, the Cincinnati team. I don't know. I'm just pulling stuff out of my butt right now. But, if I want to be the face of the season 2 expansion team, I could see that being something that would keep them from getting talent. But I think, barring that sort of thing, I think they are the most, like, I agree with you. They're the most, attractive target for a potential Overwatch League mid-season 1 player. But let's move on. We had the second match. We had the LA Valiant versus the San Francisco Shock. LA took that one out. Do we have the score on that one, Dave?
Yeah, I do. So that was 3-2 in favor of LA. This one went to the extra map. This one had the huge game-breaking Dragon Blade from Silk Thread to close out the 4th map. This was honestly one of the best matchups. There was a lot of extra maps played. I think it was at least 3. I'm looking, there's 4 actually. So yeah, 4 of 12. So in a what is that, a third of matches, they actually went to extra time here. So yeah, this was a really, really phenomenal match. One of the, I would say, 3 best, and really it was all on the heels of like, wait a minute, who is San Francisco? Like, there was such hype following that matchup, and it was so great to see them just stay put and roll the next team out there and let's try it again. And honestly, huge props to San Francisco for agreeing to do that, and just the fact that they were able to keep it together. They will never again in the history of Overwatch League be asked to play 4 maps and then immediately roll out another 4 and then go into overtime. Like, they played 9 maps in a row on that stage. I can't even imagine how mentally exhausting and taxing that has to be. And all things considered, especially where they were in the power rankings, they were pretty low. They acquitted themselves really, really well in this matchup too. Really went a long way of just solidifying how hyped up people can and should be about the San Francisco team. LA Valiant, though, I didn't have a ton of questions really about like who would they play. They didn't have agilities, right? And I didn't know who would really play their Genji for them. I thought Silk Thread did a phenomenal job. Just huge highlight reel plays. Considering he's probably not going to be starting on the hero over agilities once he's eligible. He'll be 18 by the time the regular season gets here. But so overall, LA didn't do a ton of craziness as far as their swaps are concerned. I actually
Yeah.
went in and tracked every single substitution that was made. They did do one thing I will say is it looks like Grim Reality is on the bench here. And the reason I say that is because Soon played, let's see, 4 of 5 maps in the first matchup here against San Francisco. And then he played in 3 of 4 in the next matchup later on against the London Spitfire. So it really, really seemed like Grim Reality was kind of the bench player here. And I'm assuming that's mostly like, well, we're playing Tracer right now. And Grim is, I think, an underrated Tracer, but Soon is a phenomenal
play a little bit.
Tracer.
Yeah.
He did, and he did pretty well, but I do think Soon kind of has a slight edge on the Tracer battle. So I'm guessing that that's more to do with the comps that they were running at the time than it is, a true starter at the hit scan DPS role. And I assume if they were to play or want to run a lot of McCree that day or on that map, I think that's where you'd bring in Grim Reality. But for now, he just really played the King of the Hill maps. And all in all, they had a good preseason for sure. They went 2-0. But in this match in particular, I thought Silk Thread really, really stood out. This team gets to do a really interesting thing with their supports, like we were talking about. Verbo's the hard and fast Lucio, and then we were talking about the positional battles of Unco versus Kareev for the flex support. They get to play them both, and they did. So they just ran them both out there, and let one of them play the Zen, let one of them play the Mercy, and I thought that meant that was really, really great for this team. The ability to do that and not sacrifice anything, not have anybody playing a hero they're not 100% comfortable with. I thought it was a really great way to use it, and I think if the meta shifts into that where the old support definitions don't really work anymore, and you end up with like Lucio mains and then your 2 starting players, that's something that might help this team quite a bit. So I thought they handled that really well. That was great to see. Makes me a little more optimistic that they're going to be able to maximize the talent that they signed. And I think they're in a really good position if the meta as far as healers go stays where it is. So I thought that was a really interesting thing to watch happen and develop. Otherwise, not a ton of swaps. Numlock came in for the last map of the second match, so he's not likely to be starting. But they really rolled out. Fate, Soon, Envy, Silk Thread, Kareev, and Unco was, except for one Grim Reality switch. That was the lineup for this first match, and they did really, really well. Obviously, it went to the end. I do think these are 2 kind of middle to upper tier middle teams. I don't think they're likely to push into the big elite 4, 5, or 6 top half of the standings, but they're definitely quality teams that can beat anybody at any time, both of them, for sure.
I agree. I don't see them being like a mainstay in that top, but I also wouldn't be surprised if we see one of those like either of those teams spike it at some stage in the turn of the season and just go off and get up there. Like I could see them being at the top at some point and then probably petering off, depending on their matchups.
I went into the 2 shock matches going, well, they're not a playoff team, so what do I care? And then I came out going like they could very easily be, like, considering they're going to theoretically level up and gain access to 2 big important players.
Right.
I thought, and when we look, one thing we didn't talk about really was how San Francisco managed the off tank position. That was Nevix actually playing on the Diva most of the time. He kind of handled the off tank flex. I thought he had some areas where he could definitely improve. But he's such a flexible player. Like he used to be a support player, then he was a DPS player. Now he's playing tank. Like Nevix is a Swiss Army knife, and he's not going to be perfect on any hero, but he can play all of them at this level and belong. And I think that's where his value comes from. So, it was great to see him kind of check that box as well. We were wondering who was going to play off tank for them in the meantime. So, yeah, I don't know. I left this match being hyped about both teams. There's not many losers this weekend, and there wasn't any here.
Yeah. But speaking of losers, let's move on to the next match. We saw the Seoul Dynasty go against the Shanghai Dragons. Seoul took that one out 4-0. Yeah, I mean, I think going into this match, there were at least a couple of questions, and they were answered. very distinctly.
About Seoul, that is?
About Shanghai. There were questions about Shanghai, and
they were
at least
answered.
One of
but
them was answered.
yeah, they weren't good answers for the most part. Obviously this was a lopsided affair, right? Like this going into it. No, I don't think anybody expected a hotly contested match. We didn't get that. Dorado was one of those things where, like, on defense, Seoul looked like they had a little trouble, right? Like it looked like Shanghai was able to get a little traction when they were attacking. By the way, though, they did have highlights. Like, I'm not big on Shanghai coming off this preseason, but Dia is ridiculous. Like, there's definitely star power in this team. There's big highlight reel plays. There's reasons to be excited when your team goes against this team. Like, it's not just going to be easy street, but there was a lot of problems. These guys landed like the day before this match played out, right? And it's like a 13-hour flight with like a 16-hour time difference. And there's so many reasons why Shanghai shouldn't have been able to stand on their own 2 feet, let alone play a competitive Overwatch game. And, but they still managed to perform well at times. They put together the plays. A lot of what I saw, though, was just kind of Seoul dictating the pace of things. Like on defense, everybody thought, Shanghai had a pretty good attack. And when I watched it, I saw more like Seoul was smart and efficient, right? Like they stomped their attack. They had infinite time. They didn't need to cleanly win a single team fight in order to win that map. They just needed to win the one at the end, right? And that's what they did. They bled them for time on the payload every inch and every second.
Classic Lunatic High.
Yeah, did exactly what Lunatic High does. Like, they don't always look like they dominated people when they dominate people, and I did think that's kind of what we saw on Dorado, and really, Shanghai did not do very much with the other maps either. They did complete Anubis, but it was a difference of there was like 3 minutes and 30 seconds difference in the time frame and the time window. So, like I said, they had plays, they had big moments. They have a lot of work to do. They just landed. They haven't scrimmed as a team yet. They did okay, but about on par with kind of what I expected. Like, these guys got signed for a reason. They're not bad at this game. But the team was thrown together. We're not sure it was thrown together with the best talent that China had to offer. And I thought we saw that shine through a little bit, but it's really, really difficult to negatively judge a team when everything that could go wrong and make it more difficult for them did and was the case. But at the same time, it's all we got to go on. So we're going to have to.
Right. I mean, I think it looks really bad for Shanghai because I think their best bet to really make a splash in Overwatch League was to come out very strong. I mean, not necessarily against Seoul, but we'll talk about their other match later. I think they need to really come out strong. I mean, they still have that opportunity to. They need to come out very strong because they are the only all-Chinese team. So it is going to be not impossible, and obviously teams are going to scrim with them, but it is going to be harder to set up scrims. It's going to be harder to, have those types of, that type of communication with other teams and other players, just because, like, if they want to play against Chinese teams, they're going to have to deal with huge amounts of ping. If they want to get, if they want to work with another team to do scrims. So, whereas, an NA or even Korean team can have a contenders team or something, or scrim with other Korean teams, the Shanghai team doesn't really have that. So I think they're going to have the hardest time leveling up if they stick with we're going to be a completely Chinese team. So that is not working in their favor. Like you said, Dia had some really great Widowmaker play. And just as an aside, I think this, at least preseason, was like the preseason of Widowmaker. We saw a ton of really, really good Widowmaker play. A lot of the maps were just Widowmaker duels with the other Overwatch just kind of going on in the background. Like, okay, you guys do your stuff, whatever. We're going to just watch Widowmakers play. And then once the key Widowmaker pick happens, or the Widowmaker duel ends in one way or in favor of one team or the other, then we're going to continue the rest of the map. From a viewer perspective, awesome. We've said this for forever now, that the Widowmaker plays are arguably the most exciting ones to see in Overwatch. So definitely glad to see that. I think I made this comment while we were watching. I'm like, I think moving forward, we're going to see like the big contracts go to like that, like God tier Widow player. There you can have players that are very good in other roles, but if you're not, like, if you're only good at Widowmaker, you're going to get dominated by a God tier Widowmaker, and that is so important. So I think we'll see the Lynxers, the Pines, the Tvix, apparently the Baby Bays of the world start to get those top tier contracts moving forward, because that Widowmaker duel is so important. But yeah, besides that, I mean, it was business as usual for Seoul. No one, I don't think anyone anywhere bet for Shanghai there. But that was the end of day one. So we kept track of what Deathblow and myself picked, as well as I put down what the community power rankings would have picked just based on order. So the Florida versus Shock game, everybody lost there. Myself, you, and the power rankings all lost there. For Valiant versus Shock, only I lost. I picked San Francisco there because I thought that playing the game back-to-back would actually give them an advantage. It did not. But the power rankings, as well as you, Death, got that one right. And then everyone in the world, including myself, you, and the power rankings, got the Seoul Dynasty versus Shanghai Dragons one. But moving on to day two, we saw what I would say is probably the biggest upset of the weekend in LA Gladiators versus London Spitfire. The Gladiators winning that one. I believe it was 3-2.
Yeah, they took it 3-2. It was a really close one. This one went to 5. It was 3-2, as you said. Things really kind of got started off, on Junkertown in really the way only Junkertown can happen, right? Yeah. With just these huge lopsided pushes that then just like don't get capped, or you know what I mean? Like everybody just kind of instantly gets like the first 95% of that map, it seems like, and then it takes the rest of the time.
Just the last point.
Yeah, and in this one, like LA was able to, really only slowed a couple of times. They actually capped out with like 3 minutes left. They did a really good job there. London really struggled through point A even. Like they actually never even captured point 2. So it was really, really lopsided right out of the gate, and it kind of perked everybody's ears up like, okay, what's going on? And when you look at the London side of things and why that happened, the one thing that really stood out was they were playing the GC Busan roster, right? They didn't have, they didn't have Bird Ring. They didn't have Rascal out there. They didn't have all these things. And it cost them in the end, right? Like they were really disappointed in how the GC Busan roster performed on the overall. The one thing I will say is I'm going to pronounce this horribly, but Hagopen or Hagopwen, or I don't know how to say it. But Hago's going to be, he was in for every single map. He did not leave regardless of what roster was out there. So I think it's safe to say we're going to see a lot of him coming up for London in the regular season. But things went all the way down to the 5th map. Very, very back and forth. It was really, really close. We did see the Kongdu Panthera roster come in for the Horizon Lunar Colony map. They actually surrendered point 1 pretty easily there, but only allowed like 70%, I think it was, progress on point 2. Rascal just had a phenomenal May. Like he just did a really, really good job shutting people down with that hero on this map. And I think he was the only one on the day to really play the hero on that point. So, or on the weekend, I should say, to play the hero on that point.
We saw some Rio Jae-hong also playing May.
Did we? Okay, yeah. I wasn't sure if it was this map or not, though. But
no, I'm pretty positive it was.
Gotcha. And that's even weirder because it's a support player going there. So they were the ones that kind of used it as a DPS hero, and it worked really, really well. London the attack was relatively easy. There was a Doomfist defense attempted by the LA Gladiators in hydration. It was really underwhelming. It didn't really do much. I don't even think they switched, so they just kind of like quick cap there. And from there it went back and forth. Like, so those were two really lopsided maps. Like teams kind of traded haymakers, but then London went back to the GC Busan roster, who they stuck with throughout the remainder of the map. Numbani was really, really hotly contested. He actually has a phenomenal moment where on the second attack for LA, Surefour, after they take the point on Numbani, they actually go in and he switches to Bastion and then like doesn't even set up on the cart, right? Like sets up in between the cart and the wall and like charges his ult in 2 seconds, and like Abe's just able to pop it and like push the payload the last little bit. It was a really crazy, hectic fight. Really hyped to watch that one. So make sure you check that out. That one forced the 5th map here. And then LA won Lijiang Tower pretty convincingly. It was overall a very, very poor performance from GC Busan, that roster. And, even so far as their coach, grounded them from social media. And they were not happy as an organization with the performance of that team. They've been separated from their coach for a while. So he's getting into town, probably is already, if he's not, he will be very soon. And I think they're going to really hit the books and figure out what went wrong and try to fix this thing. But for the time being, at least, I think I would expect mostly the Kongdu Panthera roster to be what London.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard the GC Busan versus Kongdu Panthera. I've heard it characterized as like a rookie team, a rookie roster, and a veteran roster, where GC Busan's kind of the rookie roster comparatively. It makes sense, and we've also seen GC Busan be so good because they're so good as a team, and they're so good at dissecting what the other team is doing and countering what the other team is doing. When you've got nothing to base off of, they're not nearly as good. Obviously, they're very skilled players, but their dominance, in Apex was not because of their individual skilled play. It was because as a team, they shut down teams. That's how they beat Lunatic High. That's how they beat, the other teams. It was because they were able to really shut them down as a team, and use that team communication and synergy together to shut them down. When you're going against a team that never existed before, when you think about it, this is the first time LA Gladiators has ever played publicly. So there's obviously no tape on them. Maybe they scrimmed against them, but I doubt it. There's nothing on this team. You don't know how these players are going to play with each other. It's preseason. They're probably not taking it too seriously. Like, I was very surprised that this happened, but looking back and thinking about it, I'm really not as surprised as I was when I saw it happen. My jaw was basically on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things. GC Busan was new, right? Like, they came into Apex and their first time there won the whole thing. So, there's a lot we don't know about that roster. There's a lot to be excited about from that roster, but there's a lot of unknown that comes along with it, and we don't know, were they meta one tricks? Like, were they just really good at what was good at that time, and can they adjust? And that's not even necessarily a bad thing if that's the case for London, right? Because they might want to run that comp that they're really absurdly good with at some point. And, they've shown, at least at times, they're better than the other roster on that team when they're running that composition. So maybe we see less of them now, more of them in another stage when the meta shifts, who knows? But clearly there's some work to be done there. But I want to look a little specifically before we move on at the Gladiator side of things. They're a team that isn't super deep as far as numbers wise. So we didn't see a ton of swaps from them. They only have 7 players, so there was a little bit of hydration. Surefour, Asher, we were talking about who's going to see play. They actually played a good amount of sit Bishu down. We're running triple DPS. They played innovative in different compositions to most of these other teams, and they had success with them. And I thought that was what really stood out to me about LA. And I'm a sucker for an innovator, so it really piqued my interest and perked my ears up and made me pay attention to them. They even had a time where on Numbani, they're running one healer, and they put Shaz on Genji, and he had this huge reset play where he's like, dash, kill someone, dash, kill someone. Gets 4 dashes off right away, and they just amazing. Quick cap the point. It was phenomenal, and then he just instantly switches to Zen like it didn't happen. It's just and they actually had 3 minutes and 40 seconds left, and they captured on Numbani, and they're playing with their support players on DPS, and so a ton of flexibility shown from them. and I want to see them play a little more in the standard 2-2-2. Like I think that's best most of the time. But you know, we talked about, you know, teams using additional roster spots to shake things up. This is one of the ways you can do that without having a super deep roster. You know, if you have the ability to, even just that one extra person, right? It gives them the ability to sit down the tank player, bring in 3 high-skilled DPS players, and kind of go at them that way. It's one person on the roster unlocked a lot for this team, and I thought they were kind of the biggest analogy here for what I'm seeing missing from Florida, that, you know, what kind of is the negative there. So I did want to highlight that quickly. And you know, if you haven't seen the Shaz play, watch it. It's pretty hype, I'm not gonna lie. They're a really exciting team going forward, and the star power, like Asher and Surefour, are both really, really good players. So I can't wait to see this team continue to grow. I think there's a lot of upward mobility, and I think the signing period might be very.
Yeah, I mean, they're part of the narrative of, okay, we see what the Junkenstein's monster rosters are, and what they can be, at least. And I don't think, I mean, obviously we didn't get to see Philly because they didn't play, but for the most part, the Junkenstein's rosters really kind of overperformed based on what the community thought. So
yeah, based on expectations, for sure.
Based on expectations, they really overperform, which is great, because I think it would have been kind of boring if we just saw, oh, well, all the new rosters are garbage. All the, you know, everything we've seen win before is still always winning. Great. Okay. Thanks for $20 million for these new teams and rosters and stuff. Great. Okay. Bye. But we move forward to, man, this one was so, my heart was pounding so much during this match.
I mean, I was pounding on you, I think, physically. Like, I don't think I've ever like hit somebody so much. I just Blevins, like, just kept hitting you.
Yeah, and
it was like,
you were like, I remember at the, well, let's just say who it is. New York Excelsior played against Boston Uprising, and don't worry, New York Excelsior won 3-1.
I think you skipped one, bud.
Oh, yeah, I certainly did skip one.
The one that I was hyped about.
I skipped the one that no one cared about.
And nobody at all. Does anybody even like these two teams?
No, they're garbage. Okay, sorry, I did skip. I jumped the gun. I was so excited. I was so excited about my match that I completely forgot about yours.
Classic Belvin.
Yep. So we saw, before the New York Boston, we saw the Battle of Texas, Dallas Fuel versus the Houston Outlaws. And we saw Dallas Fuel come out victorious in this one, 3-1. But yeah, no, this was.
They won on the scoreboard, but I think both teams won this match pretty big. This was phenomenal Overwatch.
Yeah.
This had that feel of headline, you know, just two big heavyweights slugging it out. I mean, this was everything we could have possibly hoped for, and I think a little bit more in the preseason. Like, there was surprises, there was dominating performances, there was literally everything here, and I think this one warrants going a little more in depth on. So buckle up. I'll kind of give you guys a ride here through this match. So it opened up on Dorado, and Dallas kind of came out with their Envy lineup, but they did run Custa over Harry Hook, which I thought was really interesting. Especially since they got tore up on this map. They got crushed. I've never in my life seen Envy, and I even this did not look like Envious on this map. It was nowhere near the normal performance.
Nope.
Houston was smothering them from the moment the spawn doors opened, getting picks, getting kills, held them. They did take point 1, but they had like pretty poor point 2 progress. Like, they got held underneath the bridge by the time ran out and expired on their attack. Houston was stalled a little bit early, but honestly, they only needed like 2 minutes for point 1. There was a couple picks here and there, but Dallas only won like 1 or 2 team fights throughout the entire defense here, and almost never, full stopped the payload at any given point. And that's what I mean. Like, it did not look like Envious in this matchup on this map. And I was really hyped because I, obviously, being a Houston fan, wanted to see him just dumpster him. But especially like rolling out that lineup, I thought that was the biggest surprise. I mean, Harry Hook's really, really good, and he's really, really good at a lot of different heroes. But when you bring in a player like Custa, like, you're not giving up on a mechanical sense. You're not sacrificing a whole lot. He's still a really a really, really strong player. And I thought the choice of Custa over Harry Hook was really, really interesting because I want to see more of what happens with that. Because if they can, it's not even so much about like Custa over Harry Hook. It's about freeing up Harry Hook, who can play like literally everything
right
at a super, super high level, and just giving him some opportunities. You know, they talk about you want the big fast playmaker in football. Just get him the ball in space and let him run. That's what I want to see Harry Hook do. Like, I just want to see a gun in his hands and wide open spaces, heads in front of him to click.
Yep.
I don't want to see him healing people so much. Like, he's a really, really high skill player on a ton of heroes. So I thought that was really interesting. We'll see exactly how that plays out. The next map, though, on Anubis, Dallas does win this one. Their attack really was met with minimal resistance. There was, over 4 minutes left when they captured the point here. Houston actually matched them, did a really good job on their attack. They did contest the map and made it competitive. It took them about 20 extra seconds to complete there. But on the second attack, Dallas was able to really do a lot of stall work and really harass Houston on their path to taking the first point. They did, however, kind of over defend on the first point and cost themselves in that first push in from Houston. It looked like it was going drastically in their favor. They actually get 96.4% progress on the second point before Dallas finally, there was like a big stall from XQC on Winston, who honestly, I've got to say, I didn't think XQC was going to get a ton of playing time over Coco. I'm not sure, right? Like, I thought XQC played well enough, and really he started surprising me in the World Cup. And he's continuing to do so, and he's gelling with this new team very, very quickly. I was really impressed with that. I think when they want Winston, there's a good chance XQC is actually out there and not so much a backup. So may have called that positional battle, or not called that positional battle a positional battle at all, a little too early. But Dallas does shut down Houston's defense pretty forcefully and wins the map with, like, it was like 2 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. So a decisive win from Dallas on that point, and on that map. But they did, it was definitely a well contested map. It wasn't a blowout. Going into Oasis, this is where we started to see some swaps here, right? Like, Clockwork comes in for Jake, and I'm trying to think if there was any other ones. Oh, they started to mess around with the supports a little bit. Like, they took Bonnie out. They actually were swapping supports quite a bit in the early stages of this match, was Houston. They're another team that I think has a really good chance, if the meta is kind of going into those two flex support heroes, like their ability to run Bonnie and Raucus at the same time, I think could be huge. I really like Boink as a player, but we haven't really ever seen him off Lucio, so I don't know how that would go. We've now seen him on a little bit of Mercy, and he did pretty well with it. He was a solid player. He didn't stand out as sometimes a bad Mercy or a Mercy who has a bad round can really stick out like a sore thumb. But so I didn't see that from him, but I don't know. I really like the flexibility of Houston's, and same thing for Dallas with Custa. Their ability to change the supports up to maximize the talent for their hero pools. I really like the way both teams have their support set up for what looks to be the new meta. But outside of taking University here on Oasis, Linkser is phenomenal at McCree, by the way, if you didn't know. Kind of an easy win on that point for Houston. They get the 100, that was like 19 or 20%. And then going forward, Dallas takes the next 2 points to claim this map. Gardens was a pretty easy Dallas win. They just did a really good job getting alt value on Gardens, managing their alts better. They caught Cool Matt really uncharacteristically with a couple, one was a tire, the other one was like a Pharah ultimate or something. I just didn't think he had any reason to die or lose his mech to the ultimate, but he did. So Dallas did a really good job managing their alts there. Pulled out that win, and then City Center, I believe, was just kind of a stomp. It was just a pretty easy Dallas win to claim the map there. This is where things got really, really interesting. Okay, so the forced swaps, we've already seen Clockwork in for Oasis, but now we see Dallas go back to their just envious. Here's the 6 players that have dominated the Overwatch scene for a long time.
Championships. And
here comes Houston. Linkser, get out of there. Cool Matt, get out of there. That's literally the best diva player in the world. And then one of the best DPS players in the world gets pulled out. Houston won this map decisively. I mean, they, with Clockwork and Spree, and there's nothing wrong with any of these guys, but they're just not Linkser, and they're not, they're not Cool Matt. they came in and they beat them big here. Now Dallas quick capped the first point, and it looked like I thought it was going to look like when I saw the rosters get lined up and go to play against each other. But Dallas really struggled on the second point. They did manage to take it, but a lot of time got bled. They still had a good amount of time. When I say they took point one quick, I mean it. They took it quick. Yeah. So there was like 4 minutes left when they captured point two after the time got added, but they never actually completed three. And that's not super uncommon on Eichenwald, but Houston did, however, cruise through their attack and actually had 3 full minutes remaining when they finally closed out the map and won it there. So a really, really decisive win from Houston. Right now we're seeing like, nothing but decisive maps. Like these were heavyweights trading haymakers. Like I said, like this is exactly what we saw. And then we go into a 5th map on Lijiang Tower. Night Market is as close as humanly possible. 100-99. It was really hotly contested. Yep. Gardens, same thing. Houston won the first one, Dallas wins the second one, and then we go into the third. It was Control Center, and Dallas did win that one a little more decisively than the other ones, 100-40. But it was just a phenomenal map. It could not have been closer, more down to the wire. I could not have been more anxious or nervous or excited or anything as a Houston fan. I can only imagine. I mean, begrudgingly, like I pick on Dallas a lot in the Discord channel, and that's because there's Dallas fans in there that pick on Houston a lot in the Discord channel. It's very back and forth. There's and at the end of that, nobody was saying anything bad about either side. Like there was no negatives to be taken away from here. I thought the depth performed better than I thought they would. I still don't think Clockwork's going to end up being the #1 tracer on this team, but I thought he was an adequate role-playing, replacement. I thought he did a really good job. His McCree to me looked better than his tracer. I thought both Linkser and I thought Linkser played a better tracer in this matchup, but he's kind of also your Genji player. I mean, Jay can do it, but so there's still DPS questions to be asked about this Houston roster. But I think on the overall, they performed phenomenally well. Really, really brought in what should have been and what a lot of people thought. Like, I mean, not everybody. Some people had Houston up at the top middle, right outside the top 4. But where'd you put him, Blevins? 10th in your power rankings?
They're still bad.
Hit yourself with a shame bell right there.
But yeah, because I have the new button for it.
Well, yeah, we can try it.
Shame.
I'll give you a green wall too.
Green wall. Oh, perfect. You can just pepper those in whenever you want. I don't even have to be talking.
I already have been.
That's exactly what I want to hear. But yeah, this was in my mind, and partially because it was my team, but this was like the match of the tournament. I mean, there's the only other one that comes close to like best team, the 2 top teams really playing against each other was like Houston and Seoul later. Like, I mean, it was really high up there and gives me a lot of hope that the teams that we're talking about, going from bottom of our rankings up to the middle, and can they have a chance if they level up? Like this Houston squad was basically thrown together. I mean, the supports and the tanks are kind of together partially, right? They're using Raucus a ton. He wasn't there. They had some of their better map performances with their bench players in, right? With Spree and Clockwork in the game. They cruised Eichenwald. So it's really intriguing to see. I thought both the depth and the starting lineups played really, really well for both teams. This is going to be, to me, the big one. I think whenever it comes up and whenever these teams meet in the regular season, this is going to have that, there's the divisional rivalries that have, and these guys aren't even in the same division, but this will have that playoff feel to it, I think, every time these guys meet. And I cannot wait.
It'll be the sellout one no matter what.
Also, if you join Discord, make sure you feel free to use the no fuel emote. It's the fuel logo with like a circle and a line through it.
Ghostbuster cross out through it.
Yeah. So if you wanna pick on some Fuel fans, our Discord's a good place to do it. But they not much to make fun of them for out of this one, because they brought it and they won the map. They deserved it. But all in all, I think nothing bad comes from Dallas here. But like I just think this match shows Houston is on their level. They're right there with those top 4 teams. In the second match against one of the top 4 teams helps that argument quite a bit. But this is a big one. What did you think watching it, not being a huge biased fan?
Yeah, well, this is what I thought, that Dallas, aka Envious, was not the same dominant force that a lot of people thought they were going to be and that they have been in the past. They were very good, obviously. They won, but like when we saw them in, like, if you remember Contenders, it was like never close at any point. No one
Zero
ever,
map wins.
yeah, like they won like 1 million games in a row, never like dropped a map. Like, yeah, no, this did not feel like that at all. And like right off the bat, and like you even said like straight up NV roster lost to not even the starters, supposedly not even the best Houston Outlaws, like NVS that we know and love and have seen win championships, lost to that team. So it, if anything, like it did a couple of things, showed that Houston, really is, a upper middle at worst team. Sure, I'm going to update my power rankings and put them up a few slots at least, for sure. But you know what?
Darn straight.
Yeah.
I'm going to up the ante, if you will.
You're going to shame Bell for that.
No shame. No, I feel no shame. You can ring whatever bells you want, my friend.
That's okay. I'll give you
a quality hashtag usage. Green wall.
You got a green wall too. But I'm upping the ante on Houston, and I'm not lowering fuel really, but they're human. They are not untouchable, which a lot of people probably thought they were. Coming into this,
it will not take a Korean team to beat them. Like they will suffer losses from Western teams in this regular season. So,
which is awesome. But the last match to round off day 2 was, of course, my match, New York Excelsior versus Boston Uprising, and Excelsior won that one 3-2-1. And yes, okay, they lost the map. They're the worst team ever. They lost the map to Boston. Okay, couple of things. As much as you are chagrined to say it and begrudgingly have to, Boston is not as garbage.
You know the sound that buses make when they back up so that people don't like run behind them? Like we should have that sound effect for you whenever. I'm sure I'll do it plenty too, but this one, despite the kind of lopsided outcome, it made us rewind a little bit and reassess, I think, for sure.
It made me reassess Boston. I don't reassess New York based on this.
No. New York is just fine.
There were definitely points in time where I was sweating. Right at the beginning, honestly. Remember? Oh, man. So, like, the first map on Dorado, like, New York almost gets held on point 1. It was, like, a really close.
Oh, yeah. It was, like, overtime. Yeah.
I was like, what is going on? 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 I'm like on the verge of like texting bare hands being like, you failed me, and like uninstalling Discord, like deleting Twitter, like just leaving, never seeing Overwatch again, burning all
I remember
night.
Like petting you, trying to soothe you. Like, it's okay, man. It's okay. It's the preseason,
right.
bro.
Yeah. But they came back and crushed that map. And then, yes, okay, they lost the map to Boston Uprising. But Pine, who came out and was just completely dominant on Widow, like absolutely, like, there was a lot of really good Widow play, and Pine was a lot of those Widow plays, was absolutely phenomenal. He was playing Lucio that map, so I don't even want to hear it. And, also our flex, I believe it was our flex. Who was it?
Janice?
Yeah, Janice. No, it wasn't Janice. Janice played, I think. I don't remember who it was, but
I'll find out. I'll find out for sure exactly who it was. I can tell you whether or not Janice played or not, so it would be.
Yeah, I can't check my Discord messages where it would be.
Oh yeah,
was it Janice?
Oh my God,
Janok?
Yeah, it's the similar name. It's the guy whose name is very, very similar that screws me up every time.
Right. Our our flex player was
Jay Jonak.
Jonak, there we go. Not even able to play. So I'm not even, Libero wasn't able to play the position he wanted to. SBB, Sebayobi really he didn't pop off like he normally would. I mean, I felt like this way about a lot of the so-called like heads of the team. So Tavik for Florida, IDDQD for San Francisco, and Sebayobi for New York. They all felt like they did solid, but they just did not have those moments where they like went off. which we've definitely seen all of them do before. It just did not feel like they did in this preseason. But overall,
to me, the big takeaway here was just, I mean, and especially in the conversations we've had with Bare Hands, is the guy he's like most excited about is Libero, and he was hamstrung, he was stuck, off his role, filling in for the flex support. You know, he did a fairly good job. Like, he did a really good job playing flex support this weekend, and it just shows how deep his hero pool is. But I mean, when you look at him and you look at the heroes he's played, you know, it's like Diva, Genji, Pharah. These are the ones that like Wikipedia lists as his signature heroes, and none of them are Zenyatta. And you know, so he did an adequate job there, filling in. This team will, you know, look better when they have their flex support back. I've talked about it. And it's one of the things that drove me to wanting to play the position, is that flex support is one of the most impactful, and this is all things I haven't said to Blevins because I wouldn't want him to think I would say anything nice about his team. But now that we're on air, I have to say it. But you know, a flex support is one of the most pivotal roles on an Overwatch team. I think, you know, you're very vulnerable on a character like Zenyatta. So when you get your positioning, you know, when your positioning is just a little bit off and you get punished for it, that's a whole team fight done. So it's a really, really important role. I thought he did a really good job, but you know, we didn't get to see him flex around and play different heroes and keep people on their toes, and characters like that open things up for Sabayobi. You know, they allow him the room he needs to go crazy. And you know, this is a team that I think if triple DPS is ever super good, this team's just going to be absolutely terrifying. But with that said, I mean, there were questions I had about New York, and it's not can they compete, it's can they close out, can they finish it? And that's a question we can't answer until we get to the playoffs and find out. And I feel very confident New York will be there. But this was a situation where like a lot of teams moved up, and we didn't get to see enough from New York, and they will move up. You know, I think I had them 4 in the preseason rankings, and spoiler alert, they're going to drop, but not because they got worse in my mind. It's just like, I think Houston caught them, and that's, so it's going to be a matter of, you know, they're right in there, and it could go either way with this team, right? Like they could underperform a little bit at times, like hit a down stretch or have a bad meta in one of the stages and hurt themselves. But I don't expect anything like that to happen. I expect them to be more than flexible enough to you know, compete with everybody and do exactly what we thought. And just to me, the questions for this team won't be answered until, like I said, till we get to the playoffs, and until we see can they close it out and do, you know, what they failed to do in their seasons of Apex.
Right. I'm not, you know, I'm not worried about their flexibility at all. I mean, we saw a little bit of it today. We've talked with Bare Hands about how there's just like people don't even know about the flexibility of this team. So I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about their, you know,
after all the other people we didn't even begin to know the flexibility of their hero pools. Right. I wouldn't even come close to doubting it. There's going to be a lot from these guys that we don't see coming. I think they have a chance to be one of the more innovative teams as well. Right. Very excited.
And I think I'm very excited to see what their innovation can do. I feel like there's going to be a lot of teams. I think there's going to be different brands of teams. There's going to be teams that are going to be innovating and trying to beat the meta like that. I think New York is going to be one of those teams. I don't think that they're necessarily, I mean, they have a lot of raw skill and talent, but I don't think they're going to be the type of team that tries to overpower a lot of these teams. Like, they're not, I mean, we saw this later on. They're not overpowering Seoul right now. You know, they're probably not overpowering Dallas right now. And, you know, I'm, you know, even though, like, irrespective of the fact that it's my team versus your team week 1, I'm really interested to see how that match plays out. The Houston versus New York. So, you know,
me too, because only one of them dropped the map to Boston this weekend. So that might tell us who the favorite is.
Yeah, well, you know, that's the biggest reason why I think that preseason is useless and no one should draw anything from it.
Because it lets me say things like that and you can't even refute.
Yeah, I can't even refute them. But you know, we talked a lot about New York, but let's say what everyone was thinking about Boston. Like, Boston, not as complete garbage as we thought they might be.
Yeah, I mean, they look like they belonged here. They had standout players. You know, we got the inside scoop from Grim that striker, and you know, it was somebody to keep an eye out for. I thought he had
a high noon bump.
No, got a huge high noon bump. I thought he was their second best player this weekend.
Yeah.
He was really, really solid. He had big diva bombs. You know, he was just a really solid player. You know, I don't really have any comparisons of his style of play, but you know, when you watch Cool Matt play, or when you watch Houston play, right? Like Cool Matt doesn't always stand out to you, right? Like Diva's a character that can play super well and get lost in the shuffle. So when a character, you know, when a player on that hero is able to really stand out, I think that means he's even better than it probably looks like. And Note definitely stood out to me in this matchup here. He played all 4 of the maps for them. The first time around, came up big. Dream Casper, he's got some work to do. He was inconsistent at times, but he had big plays. He had big moments.
He showed flashes of being good.
Yeah, for sure. There's reason to be excited if you're a Boston fan. I'm not drastically changing my outlook on the team. I still have a lot of questions. We'll get to that a little bit more on their second match. But yeah, I thought they acquitted themselves pretty well and looked like a team that belonged on the stage. I mean, they took a map. There's weaknesses to New York, but I think you could have just given people those weaknesses, right? And people still would have just flooded to the 4-0. You know what I mean? Like if everybody kind of factored them into their power rankings, you know, who would not be playing, and then nobody was picking Boston. And even a 3-1, I don't think here, you know, unless they were just trying to, like, you know, well, they might spike it. Like, I don't think people seriously thought this was, you know, there was going to be contested maps. And like you said, like really strong defensive performances on Dorado from this team. You know, New York went to overtime.
Well, at the beginning.
I think it was point A and point B.
Point A and
point
point B,
overtime. But once you start in overtime, like once you hit overtime in point A, it's kind of almost difficult to not hit overtime again in point 2. So, but yeah, so it flashes from Boston that makes me think there's something here to build around. I hate having to say it, but it was accurate in what I saw. So
yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. Boston probably moves up a couple, well, at least one probably spot in people's minds, and New York doesn't necessarily fall here, but they don't gain. I mean, it's really hard to see them jump over, you know, a London or a Fuel if they didn't play them, and then they did play against Seoul, so they're not going to jump over them, at least now. So, you know, New York, I think, still in most people's books in the top, you know, 4 or 5. You know, number 1 in my heart still.
They were in our big 4, and they didn't overperform. I mean, it's hard to overperform in this matchup when you're playing against well, you can't look good beating a team everybody thought was going to be terrible. So like New York in this matchup especially didn't have a stage set where we could become very confident in them or you know, gain a lot of
not from
optimism or anything. Right. Not from this match.
The second one they could have really put themselves way ahead.
They definitely could have, but we will get to that shortly here. We might actually have to break this up into 2 episodes.
Yeah. Do
we want to just do the second half recap next week?
Yeah, I think we might, because we're already at an hour and a half. So
we're at a what?
Hour and 1/2. 1 hour 30 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, we were gonna crush this one. I'm like just dying here.
Same.
Yeah, it's getting brutal.
We're gonna hold days 3 and 4 off for next episode. Don't worry, there's not gonna be more played, so you're not missing anything. But just a recap for day 2, our personal predictions as well as the power rankings predictions. So Gladiators versus Spitfire, I got that right. Again, because I accidentally wrote out LAG instead of Spitfire, as well as I didn't want to pick the same team for everything. And then Fuel versus Outlaws, I got that right, as well as the community power rankings. And then New York versus Boston, everyone got right.
Yeah, and we didn't put out, I don't think, like, I mean, I know I dropped them in Discord quick, like my predictions. We didn't predict the second day,
the 3rd and 4th day, but just
and the 3rd and the 4th day got weird with who they were playing, and like the substitutions, they got a little weird at times. So I think I was pretty far off either. So I don't want to.
Right. So what I will say is that the community power rankings, again, that were a conglomeration of 24, 25 community members in the Overwatch community, gave us their power rankings. We put them into a spreadsheet and basically found the averages. Those averages, if you would have just followed what the community said and just picked the what they thought was better every time, you would have been 9-3 for the 12 matches.
One money if you were betting money on them.
Yeah, not bad for the community. I mean, really the only ones we lost, the community lost, were Mayhem vs. Shock, LA Gladiators vs. Spitfire, and then Boston versus Shanghai, which we'll talk about later. But so not too bad. We'll run through. I mean, we should probably still do these news things really quick.
You want me to just blast through them real fast, or?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so Kaiser's going to be leaving Runaway, according to Runner on his stream. So there's still even more kind of fluctuation here going on with that team as they get ready for their contenders run or whatever the sub tournaments will be in the meantime. Code Red, Red Eye, AK, I don't even know.
Yeah, so. Yeah, Code Red Esports is an organization.
Oh, Esports, yeah.
Yeah, Code Red Esports, who is involved. Red Eye, the esports caster from Dota and CS:GO, whose name is Paul Challoner, partnering with London Spitfire to help them gain a fan base in London. Yeah,
so they're utilizing a local organization to kind of help them reach that fan base there. I think that's a really smart move. We've got the Winter Wonderland event dropping tomorrow in our time, but yesterday in future past present podcast land that you guys are living in now. So you should be able to go ahead and throw snowballs at people with May whenever you want. Miraculous Youngsters officially disbands and drops in the middle of the tournament there, the Nexus Cup. And let's see, we're going to have a new caster joining the OWL scene. Semler, I'm not 100% sure on his first name, but he's a noted CS:GO CS:GO caster. He will be joining the Overwatch League family, according to ESPN. One thing that you did not see this past weekend in the preseason that broke our hearts a little bit was ZP was not anywhere to be seen. He did post on Reddit in a reply. He's not contracted to be working for Overwatch League Season 1, so he's going to continue to push himself on side projects, things like that. Hopefully we do see him join in. It's crazy to me. Anybody who's been there since the beginning, it's lunacy to think ZP wouldn't be a caster. So best of luck to him. Can't wait to see him. We did get Hex, yeah. If I had to pick one of the two that wasn't going to be involved, I would have went Hex just to the way he was in China at the end, and it just didn't look right. I don't think he was in contenders at the end either.
No, he wasn't. All I have to say, Death.
Yeah, they flipped with us.
Hex got the high noon bump.
He did get the high noon bump. That's real. If people just need to buy into it, put money down on anybody we talk to, they're going to overperform.
Just don't put any money on Logix right now. Give him a little bit of time.
Yeah, that might take a lot. I mean, he played well because when we interviewed him, he wasn't going straight to LAN. I don't think, was he?
No, he did really well after we interviewed him.
Yeah,
he used up his bump too early.
Yeah, the bump wore out. He needs to talk to us before LAN events sometimes.
Yeah.
And then it looks like Mangachu is actually going to be able to. I was following this up, trying to read a little bit, but it looks like he will be involved in the OW Rumble. I think they found a way to get him a new passport and get him on a last second red eye flight out of Canada and get him up there. So
high noon bump.
He'll be pretty exhausted, I would assume, by the time he gets there, but he'll be playing in the OW Rumble, it looks like. If not, that's why it was a visa issue on it. His passport expired at the wrong time or whatever. I don't know, weird stuff. But yeah, no iTunes reviews, so that basically wraps things up here, buddy.
All right, so this is definitely the longest episode ever, and we cut it short. So a look into what the future of iTunes Podcast may be. So let us know what you thought. Did you hate the long episode? Do you like the long episodes? Because we are going to be breaking up the content a little bit with the new show we talked about, as well as some other stuff we're doing. So it might be fine if we just do a long episode, and then if you want shorter bursts, you can go to our other shows. I don't know. Let us know what you think.
There's a lot of ideas for what we can do with the regular season. We could, if you guys like longer episodes, I mean, we could record them back to back so that you can listen to them back to back, but have one be a recap and another one be a preview. There's a lot we can do with this. We're very open. We plan to try some things out. So I don't know, our format might not be locked in by the time the season is, but things should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So any and all feedback that you have, head over to the Discord, go into show suggestions, and leave them there. We do take every single one into consideration. But that is going to be it, guys. Huge thanks to everyone who stuck around for the live show. We had a nice little... We've been having a really nice little chat during the live show. So if you head over to twitch.tv/High Noon Podcast, Mondays at 7 Eastern is when we generally are going to be recording. It's usually... It's almost certainly going to be sometime between Sunday and Wednesday every week, no, without fail. So if you head over to twitch.tv/High Noon Podcast, you hit that follow button, you are going to be notified when we do go live, and you're going to be able to hang out in the chat. We've been doing a little bit of a pre-show, getting people involved, talking, having fun with that. And then we're also going to be doing, like we mentioned before, the Around the Podcast show, which is going to be way more heavily involved with the chat. It is a show that we're producing for YouTube, as a video platform rather than a podcast format. Depending, it might still go into podcast form, but we're not making it for podcast form. And it might not ever go into podcast form. We're not sure. So, yeah, let us know what you think about that. Let us know about all that stuff. But again, huge thanks to everyone. Huge thanks to all the patrons. You can always head over to patreon.com/High Noon Podcast. Support us there. Huge thanks to all the Twitch subs, everyone who's renewed a Twitch sub, the Twitch Prime subs, all of you guys helping us out. Really, really does help us. But the most effective way to help us is to go over to iTunes and leave us a review. We love the feedback. B, it really, really does help us grow as a podcast. It helps us go up in there. But that is going to be it, guys. Again, thank you for everything. I think that's it. Oh, huge thanks to Match Rita for sponsoring our SoundCloud. Huge thanks to just everyone. Remember, you can find all the links everywhere, all the stuff I'm rambling on now, highnoonpodcast.com. But that is going to be it, guys. For Deathblow, I'm the Blevins. And remember, it's high noon.
Got his boots and he put on his hat. He threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine now, God's my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has. He says, I'll change the world one bullet at a time till I find mine.
Go Bills!